Ladies and gentlemen, it seems that VenomfangX has gotten it into his head that atheism is in fact a religion. Let's do this. Truth is, he titled his video, "Atheism is not a religion," but come on, you know where he's going with this shit.
Is atheism a religion?
Well, let's just think about that one for a minute, shall we? How many gods do we believe in? How many divine beings do atheists believe in? Oh yeah, 0. And how many elemental divine forces do we believe in? Mindless and, not gods so much. I hesitate to say the Force from Star Wars, but that kind of thing. How many of those do we believe in? Oh yeah, 0. And how much scripture do we have? Oh, I'm sure there's some theists out there who think that the God delusion is our Bible, or God is not great is our Quran or something. But really, those are more in the manner of instruction manuals on how to deal with your misbehavior. So, yeah, also not scripture. I'm sorry, but atheism is as much a religion as, I don't know, watching sports on television is a religion. Sure, we might be a tiny smidge obsessed with it, but no, I'm sorry, it's simply not a religion.
I've spoken with many atheists who have been frustrated by Christians who say that atheism is a religion.
And do you know why we're frustrated, Venom? It's because you and the other God-botherers have this tendency to play word games with us, rather than actually looking reality straight in the face and realizing, oh yeah, atheism's not a religion.
Because, well, atheists want nothing whatsoever to do with religion or belief. They want to distance themselves as much as they can from faith, because they want to say that their worldview and their frame in which to understand reality is based on what is accepted as fact, and they don't want to allow anything that sounds like belief or faith or religion into their worldview.
Whenever I hear the other side describing what my side wants, generally speaking, it tends to come out all wrong. You guys never seem able to actually address what we say. You just sort of address what you want us to say. I mean, seriously, even if I allow that some of what you said is true, the vast majority of it is in fact a straw man. Just seriously, it's a setup. It's the whole, here's what atheists want, so now let me refute it thing. That's a logical fallacy, Venom. Now, okay, granted, I don't want to base my worldview on faith, but that's not to say that faith has no place in my world. I have faith in my friends, because they've shown themselves to behave in certain ways, and I can probably rely on their behavior in the future. Maybe I can't, maybe I'm wrong, and faith must always be treated as tentative, which I've never seen out of the religious. Generally speaking, when I see the religious talk about faith, usually they take it almost as if it is fact. At least that's the way it seems to me. And you see what I did there? I said that it seems a certain way to me. I didn't tell you what your side is. I'm just saying what my observations are. And feel free to correct me. That's a courtesy that I would love to get from you, but I don't expect that out of most theists. Anyway, point is, faith has a place in my life. I just don't base my assessment of the physical world and its underpinnings on faith. That I will base on fact. But the God-botherers, when I hear them talk about God, they don't have any proof that God exists. None. And yet they give God all this credit for having built the universe. And they can never prove it to be true. It always has to be taken on the blind kind of faith, the without proof kind of faith. And that's where I start to have problems with your position. Now, maybe you're not like that, but, right, I'll believe that one when I see it. Just saying.
I can understand why an atheist would be frustrated, indeed, whenever they're told that what they believe or accept is, in fact, a religious belief or even a belief at all.
Oh, no. It's a belief, all right. It's not a religious belief. It's a belief about religion. You see, we look at what you believe and how little evidence it has to back it up, and we go, nah, we're not on board, because your position just simply isn't merited. It isn't warranted by the facts, and so we're not with you. And we think it's kind of chowder-headed that, you believe it too. So, yeah, we don't have religious beliefs, we just have beliefs about your religion, your religiosity.
An atheist would respond by saying
what I just said. Anything you might have to say on the subject is pure speculation, kiddo, 'cause don't presume to speak for us. Seriously. That's rude.
That atheism is to religion as not collecting stamps is to stamp collecting. It's not a hobby to not collect stamps, and it's not a religion to not have a religion, or to not have a belief in God.
Yeah, I look at religion and I say, gosh, that's just simply not based on reality, not based on facts, cannot be shown to be so. I'm out of here. I'm not on board with you guys.
Now, a question I would like to ask is this: are all beliefs religious in nature?
No, they're not. If they don't involve God or some sort of celestial power, usually a creative divine force, it ain't religion. I mean, okay, yeah, there's all kinds of wacky exceptions, there's like Buddhism and shit, but the point is that if it's not about some sort of mystical spiritual realm, generally speaking, it ain't religion, no.
Let me ask the question again. Are all beliefs religious in nature?
Nope. They have to involve God, or some rough equivalent thereof.
We're going to have to be very careful with how we define religious belief as opposed to any other belief.
Agreed, Sean. Feels weird agreeing with you, but in this case, we're simpatico. Moving on.
Now, if you say, no, even believing that a hockey game, that someone winning a hockey game is going to happen, that is a religious belief in the sense that, well, you don't know. And if you don't know something and you believe it, that's a religious belief.
Well, it's not a religious belief. I mean, it's a faith claim, sure. I have confidence in my hockey team, probably based on experience, but still, you don't know for certain. Yeah, that's a faith claim. But it's not religious because it doesn't involve God. Again, we've already agreed on this, Sean. Try to stay on board.
If that is your definition of religious belief,
it isn't.
Is to believe something for which you don't actually know with absolute certainty.
What you've just described is faith. And sure, religion makes a lot of use of faith. There's no doubt about that. But it doesn't have a monopoly on it.
Then under that definition, I would say atheism is absolutely a religious belief.
Well, then it's probably a good thing that that's not my definition of religious belief, isn't it?
Allow me to argue for that.
No, let's not. Waste of time. You're going to be arguing against a position I don't hold, and I really don't know any other atheist who does, so. Venom goes on for a while about language, making points I've actually made a gazillion times. If you want to watch it, there'll be a link in the crotch bar, but it'll be a waste of time.
And so we have two kinds of atheists. We have the one that says, I believe that God does not exist, and the atheist who says, I do not believe that God exists.
Yeah, and see, I'm in the camp that says that there's not enough evidence for God, and thus I am not a believer. And that makes me not a theist, and thus makes me an atheist, you see. Now, unfortunately, the term atheosist, which is actually the origin of the term atheist, was specifically for the explicit disbelievers, the ones who say there is no God for sure. And you conjugate atheist and atheosist down to the same word, atheist, and that sucks because it really gets in the way of communication. But the fact is, I am an atheist and not an atheosist. You see, I am one who is not a theist, an atheist. It's that simple.
Now, the atheist who says, I do not have the belief. Remember, they want to say that atheism is not a belief.
Horseshit, Venom. It's not about what we want atheism to be. It's about accurately describing our position. Stop trying to ascribe an ulterior motive to us, kiddo.
So they have to be of the first kind. They have to be the one that says, I do not believe that God exists, which means they have to be open to the possibility.
And I am open to the possibility there, Shawnee boy. You just have to meet my standards of evidence, and I'm going to demand empirical, objective evidence for God's existence. And if you can't produce that, if the only way to be a religious person on your side is to use faith instead of facts, never going to be on board. It's that simple.
Which means they're no longer an atheist, they're now an agnostic.
Not this horse shit again. Venom, an agnostic is someone who doesn't know whether God exists or not. An atheist is someone who doesn't believe whether God exists or not. I myself am both. I'm an agnostic atheist. Agnostic and atheist is not an either-or.
The person of the second type who says, I believe that God does not exist, that's a religious belief.
No, it ain't, Venom. It's not a religious belief. It's a belief about religion. It's taking a look at what your side believes and saying, gosh, they haven't backed it up. I'm not on board. They're full of crap. That's not a religious belief. It's a belief about your religion.
And so the conclusion is inescapable. You're either an agnostic or a religious atheist.
And now we're down to the word games I was talking about earlier. Because this is what the religious do. They can't fight us with, logic, reason, and evidence. And so they have to use word tricks and mind games and shit to try to get under our skin. That's what this is really about. But, let's face it, Venom, you got it all wrong, pal. And I've already shown you why.
You believe that there is no God. And if you're not comfortable with that, you're going to have to switch over to the agnostic position and say, well, I do not believe that God exists. That would be an agnostic position. You're open to the possibility.
No, it wouldn't, Venom. That's not what agnostic means. Gnosis. Knowledge. I do not know that God exists. Hell, you're an agnostic too. You don't know for certain God exists. You just happen to be an agnostic theist. Oh, you might claim you know God exists, but let's face it, you're full of crap.
But you see, the leading atheists here on YouTube would never want you to be that. They would want you to be the kind that says, I believe that God does not exist.
And there you go again, telling us what our position is, strawmanning us. Yeah, Sean, that's not my position at all. And maybe I'm not one of the leading YouTube atheists, maybe I am. But I've watched enough of the folks who are the leading YouTube atheists to know that that's not their position either. I'm sorry, but we want people to think for themselves. We want people to be open to the possibility. Hell, if you can prove to us there's a God, do it. Mostly what we're against is faith, not knowledge. Seriously, if there's a God, show it to us. Quit demanding faith of us, that's all. We don't believe in a God because you keep avoiding proof, you and you God botherers. That's the problem here.
When they're asked questions like, well, what created the universe? They'll respond by saying, well, I don't know. But I believe that it wasn't God, and they're committed to that idea every bit as the Christian is committed to the idea that God does exist.
And there you go again, Captain Strawman. Actually, no, I called someone else Captain Strawman a while back, but screw it, he's gone from YouTube. You're now Captain Strawman, because that's not our position. Yeah, we say we don't know. And yeah, we say we're pretty darn convinced it wasn't God, but we're convinced it wasn't God because of the evidence we have. That's why. It's not a matter of, well, it just can't be God because we say so. It's a matter of, well, we know a bit about physics, we know a bit about astronomy, and we know a whole bunch of stuff about how the universe is put together and how it's made and where energy comes from and all that stuff. We've actually studied how the universe works, Venom. And the fact is that the Big Bang can be explained without the need for God. It's unnecessary. If there's a God out there somewhere, and that God created the universe, there's no way in Hades that that God is the God you describe. It wouldn't need to be. It could just be some mystical spark that went poof and set the universe off and was never heard from again. And that's assuming that it had a divine origin at all. You don't know, and we don't know, but what we do know does not point to a God. And that's all we need to say we're pretty darn sure it wasn't one. If new data comes along, we will change our minds, I assure you. But can you provide that data? Can any religious person provide that data? Or can all you provide to us is fairy tales? Because if that's all you got is fairy tales, Venom, you got nothing. And I'm going to trust the scientists, because heck, if I wanted to, I could check their work. Can't check yours. It's all down to faith, innit? See the problem?
And the atheist betrays himself when they vehemently oppose anyone believing that perhaps God did create the universe.
We're against people proposing that God created the universe, Venom, because you have no evidence for it. I mean, okay, sure, if you want to idly speculate, fine. But religion claims it's the truth, Venom. Religion doesn't say, oh, maybe God did it. Religion says God did it, and if you don't believe it, you're going to hell. Do you begin to see the problem? Do you begin to see our objection? You not only make claims not backed up by a scrap of evidence, but then you back them with threats of eternal torture if we don't believe it. Now, if it was true, the threats would be unnecessary. You could just show us the facts. But it's not true, is it, Venom? Or if it is, then your God is a sadistic, cruel jerkwad. Get me? It's one or the other. Either God's an asshole or God doesn't exist. Pick one.
Because their commitment to the belief that God didn't create the universe is every bit as much of a belief as the alternative.
I bet it makes you feel really good to think that, Venom, but it's not the case. And I've already shown you why in previous segments of this video. You're talking out of your butt and ascribing to us positions we don't hold. Your entire video has just been one long straw man argument. You realize that, right? At least I hope you do now. Of course, you didn't watch my last video response, so who knows if you'll even watch this one. But let's face it, kiddo, you got it wrong.
So why are they so committed to opposing, well, the existence of God? Maybe it's because what the Bible says is true, that they hate him. They know he exists, they hate him, and they want nothing to do with him.
Again, I bet it makes you feel really good to think so, Venom, but it's not the truth. And you know that's not the truth. And if you don't know it, by the end of this video you should, assuming you even watch the fucking thing.
Oh, and if you believe in God, they'll hate you too. Just like Jesus said.
You know, Venom, my dad's side of the family is Italian Catholic, okay? They come from Sicily. Now, okay, granted, I'm adopted, but luckily enough, I'm part Italian naturally too, and every now and then it comes out to play. And do you really think I hate my Italian Catholic relatives? Really? I got tons of cousins. Seriously, my aunt and uncle, they're great people. And you think I hate them? Some of them are quite religious, you know. Seriously, one of my uncles was studying to be a priest, for crying out loud. And if he hadn't met my aunt, my dad's sister, he'd probably be, well, I don't know, where? Vatican, another church, I don't frickin' know, but he'd be a priest like that, you know? I mean, and I hate these people? No, I don't, Venom. And I'm sure there are a lot of other atheists who say, we don't hate the religious. Of course we don't. We might hate their behavior as a result of their religion because they can be awfully mean to people thanks to their religion. But hatred, Venom? No.
Now, if you want to say that, well, winning a hockey game isn't, you know, regardless if you believe it or not, that's not a religious concern. We wouldn't classify that as religious. Religion has to do with theism. It has to do with belief in God or gods, deities of that nature. Even under that definition, the non-belief in a deity is theistic in nature because you're doing theology when you're affirming or denying theological claims.
That doesn't make atheism a religion, Sean. Atheism is saying, I opt out of religion. Now, yes, I suppose you could say that that's a theistic position, but I prefer to say it's a position on theism, because as far as I'm concerned, theism is taking a positive stance on the question of God's existence. You are only a theist if you do believe, or if you are on the pro side. If you're not, you're an atheist. You're someone who says, theism? Nah, not for me. God belief? Nah, not for me. That's an atheist. That's not a religious position. That is, I'm not in a religion.
To say God exists or to say God does not exist is a theological statement. And so it's within the realm of theology, and therefore atheism is, in a strange sort of way, a theistic belief.
See what I mean about word games? Venom, even if you were right linguistically, it doesn't change the logistics of being an atheist. You're not going to make us into theists by playing word games like that. You're not going to somehow make us just like you, and I can't even imagine why you want that. But you're not going to make us into these pseudo-theists that you're trying to make us into just by playing around with words, with terminology. It's not going to work. And that's assuming you're right, which you're not. This is just pathetic, kiddo. Really.
Although it's atheistic, and thus meant to be the counterpoint to theism, by very definition of its engagement with theism, it's actually a category within the discourse.
Yeah? Well, if you guys weren't making all of your outlandish claims, we wouldn't have to go, Shadin-wa-wa, are you serious over here? We wouldn't have to do it if you guys weren't running around believing in fairy tales and trying to get laws passed and shit to make the rest of us behave like we're just like you. And the only reason we engage with theism is because theism makes a menace of itself, Venom. That's it. We'd leave you alone if you'd leave us alone, but you can't, because your God told you that this world is yours, and we have to follow along whether we want to or not. Well, the answer is not, and we have to defend ourselves. That doesn't make us into theists. It just makes us into people who want to live our own lives our own way.
With that being said, there's also one final concern.
Oh, rapture.
Let's grant the atheist their position. To an atheist, there's no God, supposedly. There's no soul. There's no immaterial, spiritual, none of that sort of stuff. So everything is material. Now, if everything's material, then That's my cat.
That poor cat. You know, Sean, I got a cat too. Her name's Columbia. I love her to death. Hope I treat her better than you treat your cat.
If everything is material, well then, that means all your thinking, the brain, well that's just material too. So the chemicals in someone's brain that makes them affirm the existence of God, well, how are they very different from those chemicals which make them deny the very same concept? I mean, both conceptualize God the same way, supposedly, in order for one to affirm it and deny it. If we're not talking about the same thing, if we're not talking about the same concept of God, then how can we say that one's denying of God is the same as the other's affirming?
Given that God's imaginary, we're probably not talking about the same thing. But even so, your scripture tends to describe the deity and the effect that deity has had on the world, and we can take a look and see if that makes any sense. You know, you look around and it sure looks like what's described in the whole Noah's Ark thing didn't happen, and you look around at things like evolution, it's pretty darn certain that Adam and Eve didn't happen. And you know, there's actually very little evidence of the Jews in Egypt and that kind of thing. So we got a lot of good reasons to think that there's a very good chance your religion is full of crap, Venom. Yeah, just saying.
If you're denying what I'm affirming, it has to be the same thing.
Not really. I mean, as long as we get the major points similar enough, then I think it's okay to say that you can debunk even if the details are off. I mean, let's face it, if you're going to say Big Sky Daddy, and I'm going to say Big Sky Daddy, and you're going to say, big sky daddy that cares about whether or not you do this, behavior A. And I say, I don't give a toss about the whole behavior A thing. I care about your claim about there being a sky daddy. Well, then it really, 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 really doesn't matter that our details are not completely the same. And that is all I care about, is that you claim there is a big magical sky daddy. And yeah, that's metaphorical, but still the point is you say there is some powerful being that can see all, knows all, is all loving, all powerful, blah, 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 blah. And I see no evidence for that, and that's what I'm disputing. I don't care if it's the Christian God or the specifically Catholic God or if it's the Jewish or the Muslim or I don't care if it's like, some blue-skinned God from India. I don't give a toss. The fact is that I see no magical powers at all, Venom. I don't even see Jedi, right? I don't even see the Street Fighter 2 characters that could cast fireballs from their hands. I don't see magic in this world at all. So the fact that I might be debunking a completely different God than the one you're believing in doesn't really matter that much, because it's the macro details that matter. It's am I talking about an all-powerful being? Are you talking about an all-powerful being? Who cares if its name is Jehovah or Yahweh or whatever the fuck? I don't care. Allah. That's not the important part. The important part is, do you believe in a deity? I don't. I don't see the evidence for one. When you produce the evidence for one, I'll revisit my position. It's that simple.
And the difference between affirming or denying a particular concept, well, it's really not that big of a difference.
No, Venom, actually, it's very different. You see, when I go, I don't see any reason to believe in a God. The evidence it doesn't hold up. And I go about my day, and I do all sorts of stuff. It becomes a complete non-issue for me. But those of you who go, yeah, God does exist, all of a sudden your lives are filled with some very different activities. All of a sudden you're worshiping, whether it's like this or like this or like this. You're worshiping, and you're believing that things can happen simply by the power of thought, by the power of wishing it, by going, oh, please, great Sky Master, make X, Y, or Z happen to change my life. Okay, we're going about our day treating all of this like a non-issue, and you're acting like you're living in Never Never Land. It's completely frickin' different, kiddo. Think about it.
A true atheist within an atheist worldview.
Holy no true Scotsman fallacy, Batman.
A true atheist within an atheist worldview would have no concept of God whatsoever, and neither be able to affirm or deny it. They wouldn't even know what God was.
Really wouldn't classify that as a true atheist, but that is the purest form of atheism, I will grant you that. However, there are those of us who are atheists simply because we have no God belief. That's all that's required to be an atheist.
But the fact is, we all know what God is. Because, well, even Helen Keller, who was born deaf, blind, and mute, when she learned to communicate and started talking about God, she said that she had always believed in God even before anyone had communicated the idea to her, or she was even able to communicate.
Gee, I guess your sample group of one just proves everything, doesn't it, Venom?
It's intrinsically part of us to know God, just as the Bible says.
No, it isn't, Venom. I had to be taught the concept, and so did a lot of people. It's not innate in all of us.
And to deny God's existence is a religious belief.
You just keep telling yourself that, bucko, if it makes you feel better.
Oh, and one more thing. What is an atheist's definition of religion from an atheist worldview? Since there is no spiritual reality to them, religion, socially speaking, is just a gathering of a bunch of people who mentally assent to a particular idea, who have particular people in authority and have particular books which are authoritative. Now, atheism is exactly that.
Venom, you left out the part about believing in magical sky fairies. 'Cause atheism ain't that. And without that, it ain't religion.
It's a group of people who identify them with a particular label.
And who pretty much only unite in defense against theist misbehavior.
They gather, on occasion.
Again, pretty much only in self-defense against theist mischief.
They have particular teachers and leaders that they look up to.
Teachers, okay perhaps, but leaders? Fuck no.
They have particular documents that they find authoritative.
Horse shit. We find some of them useful, but authoritative? None of us are beholden to the God delusion, Sean.
Sociologically, atheism is a religion.
The world's first religion without a belief in mumbo-jumbo, apparently.
If it wasn't, you wouldn't call yourself an atheist. It would not be anything.
Sean, the only thing that atheist means is we're not one of you.
Because from an atheistic view, there is no difference between a religion and non-religion because there's no spiritual reality.
Wrong, Sean. The difference is that you have a belief in that spiritual realm, and we don't. That's what atheism and theism are about. Do you believe or don't you believe? It's not whether or not what you believe is true. It's just about whether or not you believe it. That's all atheism and theism are. Atheism is, we don't believe in the mumbo-jumbo. That's it.
Religion is just a sociological behavior of a gathering of people mentally assenting to certain ideas.
Yeah, but which ideas you're assenting to are the important part. You're glossing over them like they don't matter, but they're actually everything, Sean. And I'd like to think you're not stupid enough to not realize that. I'd like to believe that, I really would.
And that is exactly what atheists do. It's exactly what atheists do. Atheism is a religion, even from an atheistic definition.
See, this is the problem with having these discussions with theists. They all love to play word games so that things mean what they want them to mean. Reality doesn't matter. All that matters is if they can twist our perceptions to make it seem like the reality they want is the one that truly exists. And unfortunately, Sean, that's not the way it works. Because, well, screw it, I've already explained. For a half a freaking hour I've explained. I'm done. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying, it's bedtime. It's like 3 a.m. here. Night, gang. Now rate this video, citizen, or we put you on the probulator.